What if I told you that the worst thing a narcissist did to you was never really about you? Every sharp insult, every cold betrayal, every long silence, and every cruel little comment had a purpose, but not the one you were led to believe. That is the hard truth. It feels personal because it hits your heart, your confidence, your identity. It touches the places that matter most. But the real reason sits much deeper. If you have ever asked yourself why someone who once acted loving suddenly turned distant, dismissive, or intentionally hurtful, stay with me, because this changes how you see everything. The answer is not hidden in the exact words they used. It is buried inside what they could never face in themselves. One of the hardest things to accept after this kind of abuse is that what they did to you was never proof of your worth. It only felt that way because the attacks were aimed straight at your emotions, your appearance, your mind, your character, and your deepest fears. After enough of it, you start thinking maybe if you had been more patient, more loving, more careful, maybe then the pain would have stopped. But that belief keeps you trapped in the wrong story. Their behavior comes from a deeply unstable sense of self. They live with an ego so fragile that even small moments of insecurity, criticism, rejection, or loss of control can feel unbearable. And instead of facing that pain honestly, they throw it outward, usually onto the person closest to them. That is why the person nearest to them often becomes the easiest target. They learn your soft spots. They notice what matters to you. They study your hopes, your fears, your needs, and your longing to be understood. Then, when they feel threatened, they use that knowledge like a weapon. That cruelty is not really about who you are. It is about what they are trying to run from inside their own mind. This is also why they can treat very different people in almost the exact same way. Different partners, different friends, different family members, same pattern, same damage. Because the problem is not the person standing in front of them. The problem travels with them. It lives inside them. Understanding that does not excuse what happened, and it does not erase the hurt. But it shifts the focus away from the question that destroys so many survivors. What is wrong with me? The better question is this: what was happening inside them that made them need someone else to carry their pain? And once you start seeing it that way, something important happens. Their version of you starts to lose power. Their words stop feeling like truth. Their judgment stops feeling final. And that is where healing begins. Not all at once, but quietly, strongly, and in a way they never expected. For a narcissist, your pain is often not an accident. It becomes a tool. In a healthy relationship, conflict is supposed to lead to understanding. Two people talk, they listen, they repair. But with a narcissist, the question is not, how do we solve this together? The real question, even if they never say it out loud, is who has control right now? The second they feel that control slipping, they may turn to behaviors meant to shake you emotionally. Silent treatment, harsh criticism, gaslighting, public embarrassment, broken promises, jealous games, sudden withdrawal. All of it creates confusion, and confusion is powerful. Because when you are emotionally thrown off balance, you stop focusing on your own needs and start focusing on getting back into their good graces. You replay conversations. You apologize for things you did not do. You walk on eggshells. You study their mood like your safety depends on it. And for a while, it feels like it does. That shift is exactly what strengthens their position. The more unsure you become, the easier you are to influence. The more drained you feel, the less likely you are to question what is happening. Then, right when you are exhausted, they may give you a tiny bit of warmth, a kind word, a soft moment, a brief return of affection. And that small relief can feel like love, even when it is only a pause in the storm. That is how the cycle tightens. You begin to confuse peace with love, relief with intimacy, survival with connection. But real love does not depend on your confusion. Real love does not need you weak in order to feel strong. A narcissist often feels safest when they believe they are the center of your emotional world. If your mood depends on their approval, if your choices bend around their opinions, if your peace rises and falls with their behavior, they feel reassured. They feel important. They feel powerful. But once you begin growing into yourself, something changes. You start setting boundaries. You build confidence. You chase meaningful goals. You find joy outside the relationship. And to a healthy partner, that would be beautiful. It would be something to support. But to a narcissist, your independence can feel like a threat. Suddenly your success becomes a problem. Your happiness becomes suspicious. Your self-respect becomes something they want to break. They may mock your goals, question your decisions, or create drama right when life is going well for you. They may go cold during your brightest moments, not because you did anything wrong, but because your growth reminds them that you are no longer fully under their control. And that unsettles them more than they will ever admit. Stay with me here because this part matters. The more whole you become, the more their tactics are exposed. And once you see that, the game starts to change. Another reason their behavior feels so confusing is because they often accuse others of the very things they cannot face in themselves. This is one of the most damaging patterns. If they feel insecure, they may call you weak. If they lie, they may say you cannot be trusted. If they are deeply jealous, they may insist that you are the jealous one. It sounds irrational because it is. These accusations are not based on clear reality. They come from emotions they cannot bear to own. Instead of sitting with shame, fear, envy, or inadequacy, they push those feelings onto someone else. And if you are close to them, that someone else is often you. Over time, this can deeply shake your sense of reality. You spend so much energy defending yourself against things that do not even match your actions. You question your memory. You question your motives. You even start wondering whether maybe they are right. That is how the trap works. While you are busy trying to prove your innocence, they avoid looking inward. While you are trying to explain yourself, they escape responsibility. And the conversation goes in circles, again and again. Exhausting, pointless, draining. Nothing gets solved because solving the problem was never the real goal. The goal was to shift attention away from their behavior and place the burden on your shoulders. Once you understand that, you stop chasing fairness in a place where fairness was never being offered. And that is a painful realization. But it is also a freeing one. When you begin to understand that their insults and accusations are tied to their own inner chaos, you slowly stop taking every word as a personal truth. That does not mean it stops hurting overnight. It does not mean the damage disappears just because you now understand the pattern. But clarity gives you something powerful: distance. It helps you separate their dysfunction from your identity. So when the sting of their words comes back, and it will from time to time, you can remind yourself that you are looking at a reflection of their unresolved pain, not a final statement about your value. You were never the one who needed to become smaller so the relationship could work. You were never meant to spend your life carrying the emotional weight of someone who refused to carry their own. And every time you refuse to absorb their projection, every time you hold on to your reality when they try to twist it, every time you choose your growth over their approval, you take another piece of your life back. That matters more than you know. Because healing is not just about leaving a toxic dynamic. Sometimes healing is about refusing to let their voice become your inner voice. It is about learning to trust your own mind again, your own instincts, your own memory, your own worth. And if this is hitting close to home, keep listening, because the next part explains why your reactions may have been used against you in ways that felt deeply unfair and painfully personal. One of the hardest truths for survivors is realizing that their natural emotional reactions often became part of the cycle the narcissist depended on. That does not mean you caused the abuse. It does not mean your feelings were wrong. Anyone who is repeatedly criticized, manipulated, ignored, or emotionally neglected will react. Sadness is normal. Anger is normal. Fear is normal. Confusion is normal. But a narcissist may read those emotions in a completely distorted way. Instead of seeing your tears and feeling compassion, they may see proof that they still have power over you. Instead of hearing your pain and wanting repair, they may feel reassured that they still control your emotional world. Your visible distress can temporarily calm their own deep insecurity, which is why they may keep provoking you even after the original issue is over. They repeat the hurtful comment. They deny obvious facts. They bring up old mistakes. They press exactly where they know it hurts. Not because they want understanding, but because they want a reaction. A reaction tells them they still matter. Even negative attention can feel like emotional fuel to them. That is why so many people get trapped in endless loops of explaining, defending, pleading, hoping to finally be understood. But those efforts often change nothing because the exchange itself keeps feeding the dynamic. Breaking that pattern does not mean becoming emotionless. It means slowly turning your emotional energy away from the person who misused it and back toward your own healing. At the beginning, it often looks completely different. That is what makes the whole thing so confusing. A narcissist can seem deeply attentive, affectionate, and intensely interested in you. They notice your dreams. They mirror your values. They compliment you in ways that make you feel deeply seen. It can feel electric, safe, special, as if you have finally met someone who understands you on a rare and powerful level. But very often, that early idealization is not about truly seeing you. It is about securing your admiration, your attention, your loyalty, and your emotional investment. As long as you reflect back the image they want, everything may seem almost perfect. Then reality enters. You disagree. You ask for respect. You set a boundary. You need support too. Or maybe you simply stop giving constant praise. And that is when the shift begins. What once looked like devotion turns cold. Compliments become criticism. Warmth becomes contempt. The qualities they once praised suddenly become flaws. Your independence is now selfishness. Your kindness is now weakness. Your honesty is now disrespect. And because the change feels so dramatic, many people start blaming themselves for it. They think, maybe I ruined it. Maybe I said the wrong thing. Maybe I changed. But often the real issue is much simpler and much sadder. They could not maintain their idealized image of you once you became a full human being with your own needs, opinions, and limits. That swing between extremes is one of the most destabilizing parts of the experience. One day you are everything wonderful. The next day you are the problem. They do not hold a balanced view of people for very long. They tend to split. All good, all bad. Perfect, disappointing. Admired, devalued. And when you live inside that kind of emotional weather, you start working harder and harder to win back the version of them you met at the beginning. But that version was never built on stable respect. It was built on a fragile arrangement where you made them feel elevated. Once you stopped serving that function in the exact same way, the mask slipped. And that leads to another painful truth. Many narcissists work very hard to protect a polished public image. Around others, they may appear charming, generous, calm, successful, or deeply likable. To coworkers, friends, extended family, even neighbors, they can seem impressive, sometimes even admirable. That image may not be entirely fake, but it is almost always incomplete. It hides the volatility, manipulation, and insecurity that come out in close relationships. And the people closest to them are usually the ones who see the biggest gap between who they appear to be and who they actually are behind closed doors. That makes intimate partners especially threatening, because intimate partners see what the public does not. They see the cracks. They hear the contradictions. They witness the private behavior that does not match the public performance. And once they sense that you are noticing those cracks, the manipulation can grow even stronger. They may tell you that you misunderstood. They may call you too sensitive. They may paint you as unstable, dramatic, or bitter before you even speak up. Sometimes they go further. They may start shaping the story with others first, quietly damaging your credibility, so that if you ever tell the truth, people are already prepared to doubt you. In some cases, they try to isolate you from supportive people who might compare notes and recognize the pattern. Because what they fear is not only being exposed to others, they also fear being exposed to themselves. Keeping the image intact becomes more important than honesty, intimacy, or accountability. The closer someone gets to seeing behind the mask, the more defensive the narcissist may become. More denial, more hostility, more rewritten history, more blame, more pressure to make you question what you know you experienced. If you have lived through that, you know how maddening it can be. You start asking yourself how someone can look so calm in public and be so cruel in private. But that contradiction is not random. It is part of the structure. They need admiration from the outside and control on the inside. They need appearances preserved, even if trust is destroyed in the process. And once you understand that, you stop waiting for the public image to match the private truth. You stop waiting for outsiders to fully validate what you lived through before you allow yourself to believe it. And that is huge, because your healing cannot depend on everyone else finally seeing what you already know. The most important thing to remember is this: their urge to hurt you was never proof that you were weak. It was proof that they could not manage their own emotional reality. Every attempt to confuse you, control you, shrink you, or make you question yourself said far more about their inner world than it ever said about yours. The more clearly you see these patterns, the less power they have to define your story. Knowledge starts doing something beautiful. It turns confusion into clarity, self-blame into self-respect, fear into steadiness. Healing begins the moment you stop asking why you were not enough for them and start seeing that nothing you could have done would have filled the emptiness they refuse to face in themselves. Not more love, not more patience, not more sacrifice, not more perfection. None of it. Your biggest victory is not getting revenge. It is not making them regret what they did. It is learning to trust your own judgment again. It is choosing peace over chaos, boundaries over emotional exhaustion, truth over manipulation. It is building a life that no longer rises and falls around their approval. And when that happens, something powerful shifts. The person who once believed they could control your emotions begins to realize they cannot control your future. That is the outcome they never planned for. That is the freedom they never wanted you to discover. And if this message is speaking to something deep inside you, stay until the end, because there is one more layer to this that many people do not fully see until much later. A lot of people think the biggest wound comes from the cruelty itself. But sometimes the deeper wound comes from how long you kept trying to make sense of it. You replay conversations. You search for the exact moment things changed. You look for the right words you could have said, the better reaction you could have had, the one missing piece that might explain everything. That search can go on for years, and it is exhausting. Because the truth is, you were trying to apply healthy logic to a deeply unhealthy pattern. You were trying to find fairness where power mattered more than love. You were trying to reach honesty in someone who survived by avoiding it. And once that clicks, even a little, the fog starts to lift. You begin to understand that not every painful interaction was meant to solve anything. Some of it was only meant to pull you back into confusion. Some of it was designed to keep you chasing, keep you explaining, keep you emotionally available to someone who offered very little real safety in return. But you do not have to keep doing that. You do not have to keep performing your pain for the person who used it against you. You do not have to keep proving that you deserved kindness. You already did. You always did. And even if part of you still struggles to believe that, hold on. Because healing is often the slow return of simple truths that were buried under repeated manipulation. Truths like this: your feelings make sense. Your memory matters. Your peace matters. Your future does not belong to the one who hurt you. So if you are in that stage where you are finally seeing the pattern, take this in slowly. The damage was real, but so is your ability to recover. The confusion was heavy, but it is not permanent. The self-doubt was learned, which means it can be unlearned. You can build a life where your nervous system is not always bracing for the next emotional hit. You can create relationships where love does not come with fear, where closeness does not require self-erasure, and where honesty does not lead to punishment. It takes time, sometimes more time than people expect, but it is possible. And every step you take toward your own clarity weakens the hold that past dynamic had on you. Every boundary you keep, every moment you trust your gut, every day you stop measuring yourself through their treatment. These are not small things. These are the real signs that your life is becoming your own again. So if no one has told you this clearly, hear it now. You were never hard to love. You were never too much for needing respect. You were never the reason someone chose cruelty over accountability. Their inability to face themselves is not your burden to carry anymore. Let that land. Let it settle. And if this gave language to something you have felt but could never fully explain, then hold on to that clarity. Sometimes one honest insight is enough to break years of self-blame and begin a very different future.